YouTuber James Freeman Springer was arrested on Wednesday in McKinney, Texas, for interfering with public duties after he refused to follow instructions from a McKinney police officer who was trying to finish an unrelated traffic stop. According to the officer's account, he was finishing up a traffic stop when Springer and YouTuber Pink Camera Magic arrived on the scene. When Pink Camera Magic came a little too close to the officer, he asked her to move away from the scene, and she complied with his order. Springer did not comply with the same orders, screaming that the officer couldn't tell him what to do, and then for the officer to shut up. The officer asked him again to please stand away from the scene, and was told again to shut up. The YouTuber went live at that point, telling his fans that he was about to be arrested and that the officer had called for backup. He then started walking around the area, moving past Pink Camera Magic and approaching the street a fair distance away from the traffic stop. Almost immediately after he repositioned, a second police car arrived, then a third. A few minutes later, he was arrested for interference with public duties. Springer immediately began to argue that he was a member of the press and that filming was part of his duties. He capitulated quickly, however, as police began to place him in handcuffs, and he began to complain about an existing problem with his rotator cuff. The YouTuber's request for his camera equipment to be given to Pink Camera Magic was denied. Officers on scene told Springer that the equipment would be held as evidence. However, they instead took the SD card out of the camera before giving it to Pink Camera Magic. Springer was transported to the Collin County, Texas Detention Center, where bond was set at $2,500. A multitude of YouTubers immediately streamed in support of Springer, including BZ Watchdog, Josh Accountability for All Abrams, and John Felix. Conspicuous by his absence was Jose Chili de Castro, who recently claimed a bond with Springer after the men settled their differences when de Castro was incarcerated last year. Pink Camera Magic would live stream outside of the Collin County Detention Center later in the day. She said that there were no good cops in McKinney, as any good cops would have prevented the arrest of Springer. She was joined by 6 other YouTubers, including Clash with Bow, Chuck Bronson, and Otto the Watchdog. She also indicated that once Springer was arraigned, they had enough money to post bond. Freeman was arrested for violating Texas Penal Code 38.15, interference with public duties, which reads, "A person commits an offense if the person with criminal negligence interrupts, disrupts, impedes, or otherwise interferes with a peace officer while the peace officer is performing a duty or exercising authority imposed or granted by law." It is a Class B misdemeanor and carries a maximum sentence of 180 days in county jail and or a $2,000 fine. First offenders typically get probation and a fine if found guilty. Texas Bill 3565 was introduced earlier this year to modify the law to increase penalties from a Class B misdemeanor to a state jail felony. It was left pending in subcommittee as of May 2025. Late in the day, Carolina in Fort Worth Rodriguez picked up the coverage from the jail. A lawyer had met with Freeman as a favor to BZ Watchdog. With the bail still set at $2,500, the lawyer confirmed that a judge confirmed that the officer had probable cause. A group of auditors left to find an ATM, or an open bank, as the bond table only accepted cash. She ended her coverage soon after the lawyer left the scene. Coverage was eventually picked up by Clash with Bao on his Smurf Watch Transparency channel. Bao was live as Freeman was released at a little after 7 p.m. local time, after making bond and being processed by the detention center. Freeman would vow to fight the charges, with many of the gathered auditors promising that the state of Texas owed him a big payday for the arrest. After leaving the event, many of the assembled auditors went on an extended group live cop watch.